bill this year.
Okay. All right, I want to call the February 26th, 2020 Lake Quinsigamond Commission meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. We'll start on the agenda here is, hope everyone had a good winter, but we're going to approve the meeting minutes of November 2019. Has anyone got a chance to review those?
Very satisfactory minutes. I make a motion, we accept them.
Second the motion?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, so voted. Review and approval of bills and expenses.
So, we have $6,070 worth of bills. Mass Corps, $155 for stickers. Mass Corps, $47.90 for plates. And ESS Group, $1,125 is the remaining balance for the Newell Pond survey. So it's a total of $6,070.
All right. And we have new plates.
We're gonna have new plates?
We're gonna have new plates.
This is what they're gonna look like?
Nice.
Pretty.
They'll have slots in them though, right?
Slots.
Well, you know, so you can put a,
You got dots in them now.
They
Yeah, they
have
do.
holes in them for
The
the
dots,
screws.
yeah, for holes. That's what I
Yep.
mean, holes,
And then you
yep.
can put the sticker on the side.
perfect. Nice.
So we already have the stickers.
All right, we're good to go. We ran out last year. So, that's good. All right,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Missing from the minutes, but we, I think, need to, as we typically do in a February meeting, have nominations and vote for commissioners' positions. Chairman, Vice Chair, Treasurer, is that correct? Yeah,
That's correct.
okay.
So, I guess we can do that now.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to run for chairman, but unfortunately, I'm only gonna be here one more month,
Well, we can, you know,
so it's gonna
So I
leave
guess
me,
the
it's
vice
gonna leave
chairman
me
will
out
go
this
for it.
time.
all right. That's disappointing, because I was looking forward to that.
I make a motion, we appoint, nominate Peter Collins for chairman.
I'll second that.
Okay, I would accept that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted.
Oh, boy.
I also make a motion that we nominate Mike Piker for vice chair.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so voted.
I'll nominate Mr. Polito for treasurer, secretary, I guess. Is that what it is?
I think,
Treasurer,
I think, I
secretary?
don't think he wanted, I think he wanted to pass this time around. I think he wanted to move it on to the newcomer, Officer Amato.
Oh,
So I'll make a motion to nominate him.
okay, well, I'll second
For
that
that position.
nomination then.
Officer Carl from the Shrewsbury Police Department
Yes.
is Treasurer.
But I want my initial nomination to reflect the high regard I hold Mr. Polito.
I appreciate
He
that.
did.
I have no problem with relinquishing my duties.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, abstained, good, so voted.
So you're gonna tell,
That's all the officers, right?
Yeah, he knows.
Cal know you did that?
Yeah.
Angela's
excited.
stuck with secretary.
He's excited for the new position.
Would you like to?
Jessica is.
Oh, that's right, Jessica. All right. Okay, so commissioners' reports. A lot of this will be covered downstream here when we go through the lake management plan. But essentially, over the winter, we've been, prepping and trying to get, everything set up. You know what, I'm just gonna wait till we get down to lake management, because almost all of it is related to that, so gonna move on from there. Mr. Piker.
Few items, it almost goes without saying, but let it just be articulated. Nobody should be on any ice on Lake Quinsigamond at this time. It was a season where there was virtually little ice. Heard a report of some kids skating only a couple weeks ago. I know that about the middle of December, there were some ice fishermen in Flag Pond. And other than that, there's just some bergs floating around. The ice at this point has got to be cellular, and if you walk on it and you think it's safe, it's just going to crumble, and then you're going to be in trouble. So, please, at this point, probably all of the ice, of any ice that's on the lake at this point, may very well be gone within 7 days, 10 days. Moving on. My understanding, the bald eagles have returned. It looks like the same couple. They're not using the same tree. They're using a tree next to it on the same island. They've been building nests. I've heard reports of eagles flying around with sticks in their talons, so they've rebuilt the nest. They're not as visible as they were last year, but hey, they're back. I think that's a great thing. There's also been other waterfowl besides Canada geese, common mersangers, swimming ducks, white ducks, and the swans have moved around. But typically, the swans will move around when there's not any boat traffic, and they'll basically kind of retreat to the more calmer areas of the lake where there's not as much boat traffic. That seems to be their habit. Actually, I saw a swan with a rapala fish lure in its mouth last week. It was hanging. And a day later, it looks like it was gone, so somehow or other he got it off of his mouth. But it was one of those rapalas that has treble hooks in them. They look like a shiner. So it was kind of sad to see, but it seemed to be gone. And I think it was the same swan when I saw him the next day. People will be boating soon. Just don't fall in the water. It's cold. But and wear a preserver. But for people who would use motorboats, the lake is down. And correct me, Mr. Chair, if I'm wrong, but I believe we're going to start to let the dam go back up on 3/1. Is that correct?
That's right. Well,
So that's this Sunday.
thereabouts, 3-1. Yeah.
Well, so about this Sunday and Monday, the dam will rise and the lake will go back up. Now, some people might say, oh, geez, there hasn't been a lot of water. Frankly, from my understanding, is we're only 1/10 of an inch off of the typical level of water we would have in the year to this point. So it's coming in the form of rain, obviously not in the form of snow. At this point, Mr. Chair, I think that's pretty much it. Just be aware that if you put your boat in, there's going to be some areas that you could potentially hit and wreck your prop because, the lake is still down right now. I don't know, about 15, 18 inches, I'd say. It's about maybe 18 inches. But it's enough such that, if you had a motorized boat, you could wreck the boat. So, enough said. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, I have obviously a motto on here. Is there any report from the Shrewsbury PD?
Just that I spoke with the command staff this afternoon. My lieutenants apparently had a meeting with the environmental police. They'll be housing their boat in our boathouse again this year, and they said they're going to give us some extra help. Like the previous years, I guess 2 of their men have been on military leave for the last year, so they've gained those positions back, so hopefully we see some more help out there and some more presence. Other than that, our boat is still out of the water till probably the end of March. We'll get it ready to go back in.
Okay.
Nothing else to report.
Any, on the EPO side, is Dustin coming back, or was it?
I'm not sure. I didn't attend the meeting. I was just told that they have 2 men back, so I think he is back from the military. Him and maybe Tom Burbank.
Okay,
So
that's good.
good to.
Any, I don't know, how, do you guys schedule out, like, okay, we're gonna spend this much time on the lake, or does it just kind of happen when it happens?
For us or them?
Yeah, for you.
For us, it's depending on manpower and vacations, whether or not we have enough guys on shift. We have to have minimum 5 on the road. So if we don't meet that 5 then. If there's 6 guys, someone calls in sick, we only have 5 for the road, they'll pull the guy off the lake.
Yeah.
So,
That's
that's a big problem we had last year.
right.
It's gonna
Yeah,
be
I
a lot worse this year, because we're gonna be down a lot more guys. People leaving and retirements and things like that, so hopefully we still can fill everything.
Okay. What about like retired guys? Would you hire them from like another department that had some kind of experience? You know, if they were looking for part-time work or?
Like I told you, I'm gonna be on a fixed income, so.
That wouldn't be up to me, that'd be up to, but I don't, it has to be active personnel, I believe,
To be on the boat?
yeah.
Yeah. Because they used to.
Except for Roger, he can, Captain Steele can come over.
Pretty much on a
It's gonna be his
He's
retirement.
got his own horse, so that's good. All right, so, that's basically when it happens, and the requirement that you have to have people on the road, that's like a union thing, or?
No, it's just the department policy, you have to have, yeah. We have,
The police department.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and I agree with that, you know, but on a Sunday, I don't know any places busier or more dangerous than Lakeland City.
Well, hopefully we have, some more help
Excuse me,
from,
not Worcester, Worcester's a
from
different story.
Worcester this year.
Yeah, well, that was my next question.
I'll have my report when it's my turn to speak.
Okay, all right, good. What a good news.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see, who's, Captain Steele.
Regarding lake patrols, I hope to have an update for you at the March meeting.
You're gonna be at the March meeting, right?
As a matter of fact, I do plan to attend the March meeting.
Awesome, that's
It'll
great.
be my last meeting at the Lake Commission as a commissioner.
All right. All right, well,
Is there a discussion of possibly getting a boat this year?
Did you put in your annual request?
The request is in like it usually is, that, may have some more information for you in March.
Okay, well, thank you. Mr. Polito,
No report.
thank you. Sam Marie,
No report.
all right, thank you. And Bill is out of the country.
Not in
Okay.
China, is he?
Actually, I don't know where he went. He just told me he wasn't gonna be here, so it's,
Scary.
it is. All right, we're gonna update on the lake management plan. So, as Mike had alluded to, DCR will probably be putting up the dam starting the week of March 1st. Some day within that week. We haven't determined the day yet, but it'll be early and often.
Next
So-
week sometime.
Yep, so, that's just starting us out there. The indication there was, because I actually called them earlier in the month, because I was concerned, because we didn't have a snow cap, an ice cap, or a lot of snow that, we didn't have enough, water. And, from, their feeling was that we actually have had a lot of water. It's been a pretty wet season, so, as Mike said, we're only down like 1/10 of an inch, so they didn't feel, and the water's, running over the dam at a good clip at the Hobby Dam, so, everything's good there. So they're gonna start putting it up, and we will raise it gradually. Now, the lake is not, it's not like we're gonna put the gate up, and then all of a sudden, poof, you're gonna have, you'll be at normal pool. It'll take, it'll probably take till April 1st to get it all the way up, depending on Mother Nature. If it starts raining and we have a lot of events, then they'll actually, obviously, escalate that, but if not, then, it'll probably take us that long to get the thing up. And we have to do it kind of gradually like that, just so we're not shutting off water downstream. That's the main reason why you're conservative when you do that. So that'll go there. We're going to, I guess we have to put out a RFQ for treatment. So we'll be doing that, and next month we'll have an update on that, so hopefully we can get that done and get moving on that. I'd like to treat a little earlier this year for some of the stuff we're treating with. The good news, and this, just kind of reiterate what happened in November, the good news is we actually did we had good success fighting the milfoil and fanwort in the areas that we treated south of the Stringer Dam. So it's going to be a little bit less of a treatment, that's what we're thinking now, that we will have to do, so that's all good. Some of the chemicals that we use are kind of like an every other year thing, so so we'll do the treatments appropriately. The drawdown worked out really well for us in the areas that it works well for us. I mean, obviously, drawing down the lake 30 inches, which I believe is where we're sitting right now, you know, in the main part of the lake where it's 60, 70 feet deep isn't really too much. And there's not much of a weed problem there. But in the areas like over by Flint Pond and Flag Pond, especially in Grafton and Flint Pond, it actually does do a pretty good job of pushing that stuff back. And that is the highest concentration of invasives that we have, besides the cove at Sunset Beach there, on the Great Lakes side of Sunset Beach. What's the name of that cove? I always forget it's Sunset Beach to Stolen Road, that thing in there.
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
All right. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
I can't believe you don't know that.
I know, I'm shocked.
That's amazing.
Well,
Do you have Mike Perna's phone number?
there's a Pickerel Cove that's behind, it's just a little inlet over by, no.
Okay, all right, no be good. All right, so, yeah, that's a focus we wanna do, and we wanna work with Natural Heritage to see if we can find a way to start treating, at least in an experimental way, in those areas that we're not allowed to treat in. And basically what's happening with that is that, that the endangered plant that we have, Vasii, is in and around those areas, so, excuse me, the state is, I swallowed wrong. The state is concerned about, affecting the habitat of the plant. Not so much even killing the plant, they're just worried about affecting the habitat of the plant. So we're gonna work around that and hopefully we'll get to treat in some of those areas. We're getting also a large crop up in Half Moon Cove, which, 10 years ago it was
Yeah.
really clean, and now it's just getting worse and worse and worse, so it needs to be dealt with. So those are the real goals this year for Lake Quinsigamond. In addition to that, at Newton Pond, we're working with the town of Shrewsbury right now to two things. One, to fund it. We're probably going to we have all the proposals from the private companies, ESS and whatnot, for the weed map and how much it would cost us to go in there and do the permitting part of it, which we'd like to get going on this month. It is very expensive to do this part of it, so we were hoping that we could leverage some of the resources we have in town, because Shrewsbury has an engineering department and whatnot, so we're looking to kind of facilitate that. There was a little bit of pushback from those folks, because that's not, the engineering department at Shrewsbury, they're good at building roads and sites and engineering that kind of project, but, water projects are a little bit more involved and different than, they don't feel that that's really their wheelhouse. So, we're still going through that, but that permit process I'd also like to get moving in the March timeframe, so we can get all the stuff we need to do to treat that, so that's the update on that. And the other thing is we have, from a funding standpoint, we're gonna go to, and Bill Nelson has done some great work in Grafton, and he's met with, I wish he was here tonight to kind of, so I could pat him on the back. But he's met with the town administrator, he's met with the selectmen and the Conservation Commission, so he's really doing a nice job of getting in front of all these people, and there's a general openness, I think. We haven't gotten the approvals yet, or I don't know if we're on the warrant at this point. Hopefully we'll work some of the stuff out, but it's basically moving in a forward direction there, because we've kind of been in a stalemate, and there's been some change in the Board of Selectmen especially over the last year, so it seems a pretty positive thing. And I'm hoping to have more information when Bill gets back. So those are basically the, in Shrewsbury, we're gonna, approach the town to do the same thing. They've been very generous with us and kept us going. Worcester has agreed to pay a portion of the treatment we did last year, although we haven't received payment yet, but they've said they're going to do it, so that's also a step.
Would rather owe to you than beat you out of it.
That's right. So, we may have to drain the Worcester side of the lake. That's the way it is. Build some type of fence, and make Worcester pay for it. That's the lake management plan, and we were discussing the law enforcement, which is another big area for us, and there's some problem areas developing on the lake. John, I don't have to tell you, we have the floating islands of people with music and all that stuff, so that's kind of crazy. Brownie Beach continues to be a big party area, which kind of makes a mess. And now we've had folks that have discovered Oak Island and Shrewsbury down by the other boat ramp, and that's becoming a gathering place and running jet skis out of it. And there are literally 30 people, families, having picnics and playing music, and they have a latrine area set up, and it's getting more and more sophisticated all the time. So it's becoming a problem. And by the operations of the jet skis, it's a smaller part of the lake over there. So you put 15 jet skis in there, it gets pretty sketchy as far as safety goes. And one thing I would like to be able to do is to mark the bridge. And I don't know, I guess we approached DOT, but the Route 20 bridge has no, when you come around the corner into, to go on the Route 20 to come into Flag and Flint Pond, there's no sign that says no wait, there's no sign that says slow down, there's no speed limit. And literally, more than once last year, me or someone else that I know is coming through that tunnel, and when I go through with my boat, I have a straight inboard, so there's no trim on it or anything. It's forward neutral, so we're going pretty. But people have literally come by in a jet ski and passed me, going full speed, which basically soaks the boat because it's throwing off a spray. One gentleman had his daughter on the front of the jet ski when he did it. One wrong move, one little thing, because he was literally a foot from my boat. He runs that thing aground under there. Basically, they're going to go flying off and probably hit the top of the bridge. So it's not a good situation over there. It's very dangerous. I don't know. I know you can't get the police boat over there.
No, and that's a concern, but it's
Yeah.
also, funding to get a jet ski for us to patrol over there, and it's a whole nother,
Right. The Oak Island part, it should be fairly easy because Oak Island, that part of the
We
issue,
can- yeah,
you can
we-
get there because
we can get there.
you could drive the car in there. But yeah.
we weren't aware of the problem until towards the end of the season last year, and,
That's when the
We-
problem came, at the end of the season.
yeah,
Well, it was there. We just
it was there, we
No
weren't
one wants to
aware
come.
of
I don't
it.
want to call. People were out there having fun and taught. I'm like, it really
After there were a
wasn't-
few complaints, then we
Yeah.
we went and took care of it right away, so hopefully it doesn't continue this year, but we'll keep an eye on it, we'll monitor it,
Last year, you guys posted signs. It was-
yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get, some more permanent signs for that area, too.
Right. Maybe plant some poison ivy or something. I don't know. So, good. Thank you. Okay, that's, any questions or comments about the lake management plan? Anything I may have forgotten? All right, moving on, discuss and act on setting fees for 2020. That's actually, we actually did that in November, so we can cross that one out. Move on from there, they all went up $5. We'll have the updated application information, stuff like that on the web.
Yes.
One thing on the web, Angela, I saw the renewal I didn't see like the original application stuff.
Yeah, Jessica was working with me today
Okay.
to get everything updated, and some of it went on the website today, and the rest will go on tomorrow. And
Okay.
then the police department will start sending out the renewal applications to everybody
Okay,
as well.
perfect, thank you. One of the other things I'd like to, go early as possible this year, so right after, what's our date, May 30th or 31st? You're supposed to have your plates on,
May 31st.
May 31st? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go out and do an effort and get some volunteers, and I'll do it, I'll certainly be happy to do it. I went out last year, and went around Flint Pond, Flag Pond, Half Moon Cove, and, I'm gonna say probably 40% of the people had plates or and/or valid stickers on their dock. Some just didn't have any plates at all, including one of the condo systems over there, so that was
Just
disturbing.
one thing we can just stress to everybody, if you're gonna take the time to come in or to pay for your registration, put the sticker on your plate.
Right,
That way we know.
exactly,
Otherwise,
because that could definitely
we could
happen.
issue a citation and we're not aware that you actually did pay for it because the sticker's not there. So we have to look it up in the system
Right.
to know that, but, take days to check them all.
So, in the spirit of that, is there a way to get a list of, the people who bought plates, people who have a dock plate or registered, have a registered dock?
Yeah, Cindy has a
So we
has a
can-
list of
we
that.
can-
It's in our system and at the
That's
station.
something that can be printed out and,
Yeah,
because, and it has, and I'm asking a question, you don't know the answer, that's fine, but it has the plate number and the address on it.
correct.
So if I go to a dock and say, okay, this isn't on there,
You run the plate number and it'll give you the name, the address, everything about them, that person, so it's
Okay.
it's in the system.
perfect.
If that
That would
plate's
be
not
helpful.
registered, some of the plates are so old, there's a lot of decrepit docks that are still in the lake.
Oh, yeah.
Some of that stuff is not in the system, so,
Some of the old docks that don't even have a plate on them.
yeah.
Yeah. And that way you have to figure out where the house is on the street at that point. All right.
Correct.
All right. I'm just trying to, do some of that legwork so you guys don't have to do it. I'd rather you were out there
Appreciate it.
doing other stuff besides that. And we'll see what we can, bring to bear on there. One other thing that did happen this winter, I just remembered, was that I got a complaint, I'm gonna say probably, in early January, and, someone had called up and said that there was one of his neighbors was using a ice eater or a bubbler, they call them, basically to keep the ice away from his dock. And he had an area, I went down and looked at it, and he did in fact have an area that was, I'm gonna say, almost the size of the room, cleared out in front of his house, because his dock was still in the water. So, I called him and talked to him, and he didn't realize that they couldn't do that. And so he did remove, and luckily for him, it was like 2 weekends later, we had that warm spell and it got into the 50s or whatever, and he was able to go in there and get his dock out and on. But just so everyone understands, you can't put on a circulator in Lake Quinsigamond. You can't have or cause a hole bigger than 10 inches, I think it is, right? So, ice fishing's cool. It's for the safety of everyone right there. I mean, if you consider this, if there were a bigger ice cap on the lake and it were safe for, say, snowmobiles, and they're tooling along, and, poof, there's some open water. It's a very, very dangerous situation. It's not really good for the habitat either. The ice is good. We want it on the lake, and we want to keep it as natural as possible. So There's no circulators, bubblers, whatever you want to call them. You can't prevent the ice from doing that. You can't break the ice up with boats, to get it out of your way. It has to have it has to go out naturally. So that's the message there. And correspondence, we have a letter as an abutter from 615 Plantation Street. They're gonna do some work. I think that's the old Fallon up there, and the city is putting in, what's that facility gonna be, Jack?
CVS.
It's a CVS
Oh,
thing?
so I could talk about that. It's a biofiltration unit for the lake.
That's what this, okay. I thought there was something else going up there. All right, then we'll let Jacqueline talk about that when she comes up. That's all good. And we also had a report of a dumping of salt in the Brownie Beach area coming out of the coal mine, where the coal mine brook comes out. And I don't know exactly what they were trying to do there, but they dumped a whole bunch of salt in the lake. So I believe the city's going down there to help get that stuff out of there.
Like an ocean?
What's that?
Trying to make the lake like an
Yeah,
ocean.
into a saltwater pool, I guess. I don't know. It's not good. That stuff's not good. Not the right kind of salt. Okay. And that's it. Any questions about any of that? All right. And item 4, discuss and vote on event dates for the Lake Quinsigamond Towing Association. So, is there anyone from the Towing Association here?
Rowing
The
Association.
Rowing Association. I just read what's on the paper. You know what, they could have changed the name.
Typo.
Patrick.
Hi.
So, hey, just want to start off by, hearts are always,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
tragic thing that happened down there, so.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Be a long road ahead for all of us, but
Yeah.
strong bunch of kids.
I hope you have a good season this year.
Yeah, I'm not with Holy Cross anymore, so that,
Well, the QRA.
yeah, they'll hopefully will. I'm sure we will. So, we have the applications in with Angela for the regular spring season. We have one less weekend than normal. The only change I would like to point out to you, and it's primarily because I like to discuss it, is Friday, May 22nd, and Saturday, May 23rd. That's the Friday of Memorial Day weekend and Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. We have historically not asked to close the boat ramp. And especially last year, it was dangerous having the boats that came in off the ramp on those days. They're not local owners that were dropping their boats in. The other part of that is that on the 23rd, we take the entire course out that night right after the race, so that it'll be out for the rest of the season. And we have boats on the water until dusk, taking that course out. And John can attest to it. As soon as that ramp opens, everybody is out on the water, and I personally believe it's dangerous. So we are requesting ramp closures for both of those days, and on the 23rd, we're essentially requesting a ramp closure until 10 p.m. because that allows us time to take the course out and take it out safely. Those are the only changes.
So that's a big ask. I mean, it's Memorial Day, that's the kickoff weekend. It's, residents are putting in their boats then.
I don't, the issue, Mr. Chairman, isn't residents at all. It quite honestly has nothing to do with the residents. The residents can pretty much put their boats in and out as they choose, and they have been, and we've tried to work with the Shrewsbury Police and the environmental police to make sure that that happens. The big issue is people that have nothing to do with Lake Quinsigamond that are coming on with big boats on a warm afternoon or evening. And there's a lot of activity still out there on both of those days. I think it's,
Is there
this is
a
my
race?
own personal opinion, it's dangerous.
Well, yes. You won't get any argument from me about that. I guess that a couple of things. This is a great pond and mass access, people have access to it. That's a boat ramp. And if they pay their fee and they, supposedly be able to use it. I mean, we certainly shut down the lake when there's a tournament,
There is a race on Sunday,
if there's a race, and
but there is a
try
race.
to accommodate that, but we've always asked in the past too, that, you kind of avoid that particular weekend, because it is what it is, it's Memorial Day weekend. It's kind of the launch of the summer. And I know, myself included, sometimes that's when my boat actually goes in, is Memorial Day weekend. It's when it's a target for people.
Mr. Chair, I don't think he's saying, there's not gonna be an issue. If you wanna put your boat in, residents are okay. I think he's asking anybody who does not live in Shrewsbury or any residents that don't live on the lake can't put their boat in that weekend, just people coming from outside.
Excuse me, and it's also Friday afternoon, and then all day Saturday until 10 PM. And then it's open Sunday and Monday, great. It's just Saturday, there is a big race. It's the NAIRA is the high school championships. And that's always been, since 1950s, been on that particular day. It's been getting worse and worse and worse on those afternoons. And last year, I promised myself after that race, after we took the course out, that I would request it this year because I thought it was dangerous.
All right, so here's my concern, and I'm doing this from history, not, something I think may go wrong, is that people have been turned away at the boat ramp by law enforcement because the ramp's closed. Residents have been turned away. Basically, it's hard for everyone they don't want to deal with checking people's ID or whatever. I don't know what the problems were. But basically, they get turned away, they say, move on. If the resident questions that, it typically turns out awkward for the resident. I'm not so much Shrewsbury PD, because it's really been around the environmental police, because that's one of the issues that we have in environmental police, and hopefully if we have two people that are assigned here all the time, they'll know the rules and know what we play by and all that stuff, because that happens on the water as well sometimes.
I'm hoping
Boating
that's-
specifically.
I'm hoping that's history primarily because the environmental police over the last couple of years, and Angela can bear this out, have been unable to staff. Not only unable to staff things that they've agreed to staff. So we've been relying primarily on the boat ramp on Shrewsbury Police Department.
Well, I think it was last year that I got a call that they couldn't get in the boat ramp, and they were a resident. So that's, if we can have some kind of assurance that that's not going to happen, and I don't have to, explain to people on the lake why they can't put their boat in on a Friday on Memorial Day weekend, when they may have plans. I mean, they have, they may have their family coming out, they may have all kinds of stuff. If it's a nice day.
No, we don't,
And I know you don't want to stop it. I'm not,
and we do everything we can to.
I know you don't want to do that, but that's why I'm hesitant to close a ramp down, because I don't think you can control it. You can't control what law enforcement does. So that's my concern.
When that race comes up for that weekend, when you call to post for details, have it in writing that residents only are allowed to use the ramp to access, to put their boats in. Anybody outside of town for those dates, you can say no, but, and of course, they use that, the Shrewsbury side of the lake, north and south, in gear only.
Yeah.
No wake.
The little
But
east, yeah.
residents only on those days. That way, that when environmental police, they typically have someone at the ramp from environmental, we're usually up at the street. So if we know on that day, if everybody's on the same page, then there won't be any
Yeah,
problems.
and when you guys are around, it's not an issue, it's just,
Okay, and what do you do, check their ID?
Yeah, just you have an ID. Let me see your
Stand a
address.
driver's license,
Yeah.
you're operating a
okay.
car.
Driver's license.
As long as we have that in place,
yeah, we'll
you know,
put it,
I'm
we'll put it on the
okay.
public access,
We're not breaking
That's
any
the same.
rules with Mass Act. Huh?
I'm not sure that they would agree that you could only say Shrewsbury residents only on a state
So it has to be everybody,
parcel.
no?
I'm not, I mean, we could check. I mean, if this board says it, they might endorse it, but
That's right.
it's a new territory, so I'm not sure.
I think you'd be in safer ground if it was lake residents only, because they're on the lake and they gotta put their boats and bring
Right,
them around.
lake residents.
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct, lake
Right.
residents.
Sounds right.
that's fine.
Patrick, if I can ask a few questions. When are you gonna put the race course in?
that will start, beginning of April.
First week of April.
First week of April. And that goes in slowly over about
And
a
you're
week.
talking about taking it out then Saturday
It comes out-
evening, the 23rd?
Yeah, it comes out on the
May?
23rd, right after the last race go to sound, which is usually
Okay, so,
5:30.
and you're asking for closure of the ramp other than, as we've discussed it, Shrewsbury or Worcester abutting residents for Friday and Saturday, but then otherwise, the ramp will be open on the Sunday and Monday of this Memorial Day weekend. Okay, so I got it straight, all right.
The ramp will be closed
Friday and Saturday.
Friday
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 the
night.
22nd,
Friday night,
Well, yeah, it'll be Friday from noon to 7,
okay.
Saturday from 7 AM until 10 PM.
okay.
There was talk of the high school, Shrewsbury and St. John's. How many lanes do we have out there now?
None.
No, okay, I deserve that. How many lanes are on there when they're out there, how many people are out? Like
Depending
during
on
the
the
season, how many lanes?
beginning of April, it'll be 5.
Well, we install 6
Yeah.
to start.
Yeah, we install 6 to start.
Okay.
And
And this,
then
and the six
7.
allows us, the sixth lane still allows the eastern lane on the Shrewsbury side.
Yeah, the issue with that is we end up with that travel. Remember, all our permits all say there has to be a travel lane that people can go at wake speed
Yes.
along the Shrewsbury shore. If we race more than 5 boats across, it impedes that lane.
Okay, so the 6 lanes, but one of the lanes is the travel lane. When you have a race with 6 boats. All right, so, so in that case, while the race is, the 10 minutes that they're zipping down the course, that basically is, you don't want any motorboats in the lane, I'm assuming. So that would prevent a boat from going in, up and down the lane. All right,
But there's a race every 10 minutes.
what's that?
But there's a race every 10 minutes, that's the,
So, are you saying that so in the case when you're having a 6-lane race, there's no
well,
travel lane for the?
we were getting away from 6-lane races, it was my understanding.
Yeah, I think Shrewsbury High, though, and St. John's wanted to do a couple races that are 6 lanes.
Yeah, and we can discuss that internally and make sure that it's covered correctly.
Okay, like if it's a temporary thing and they're just going up and down and it's only gonna, you can stop.
Yeah, if it's a
you can
whole
stop
lot-
the- Stop the boat at the bridge and saying, look, we're just doing a race 10 minutes, we'll let you get out.
Yeah, it's an issue if it's a long, if it's all day, it's
If
6
it's all day,
lanes, then there's a
it's
problem with
it's a
that.
deal.
Or if it's all afternoon, that's gonna be a problem. But
it's a
if
deal killer.
it's a one-off kind of thing,
Right.
then we can deal with that internally. If it's a situation where teams are looking to row 6 boats across all afternoon, that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, I don't think it's all afternoon.
Yeah, that's
We'll
a,
figure that out
that's a
internally.
deal killer, just so we know that, and also we need to be able to inform, the environmental police if they're the guys keeping the gate at the bridge. Because again, we've had issues with people being able to go down there, and I understand from their perspective, their visual perspective, that they're looking down this lane, and there's boats coming, there's boats going, it's like, yeah, you can't go down there now, it's crazy. And so-
Excuse me, just 1 second. How many details did the EPOs actually fill last year roughly, do you know?
Well, I would say for the championship regattas,
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe 30% of what we asked for.
Yeah, so.
And we ended up towards the end of the season, I think, just making an arrangement with Shrewsbury that
I think we
Shrewsbury would
were there every
be
time you asked us.
the sort
Me
of.
and Shrewsbury pretty much cover everything.
Yeah, Shrewsbury, yeah.
I get it, because the SOP is it goes out to environmental first.
Correct.
And if they refuse it or decline it.
Well, quite honestly, and I think they'll tell you, they don't have the manpower.
Right, but the issue, I think, for these guys is they don't, it doesn't get declined till like the night before, so it's like, whoa.
So we're trying to avoid that
All right.
as much as we can, and
I guess we can try to work on our end to improve communications. It's just not fair to residents, and there's been more, well, I've seen more than one, at least one instance that someone has left their house in the morning, gone to the south side of the lake, and then tried to get home and couldn't get back.
and when we're working with local
And it
folks, it
resolved,
works
it
out great.
resolved,
Yeah.
because someone called and
That was taken care of.
that was taken care of, but, it was,
We're trying to make more people aware. We're trying to make everybody.
I guess what I'm trying to say, Patrick, is I'm laying some of the responsibility of that these guys are, that the law enforcement's informed, with you as well. So you're responsible for the permits in your name, and if that permit isn't being,
The permits in the
What's that?
the permits in the corporation's name, so we
well, I
will
mean,
assume.
in the
responsibility.
rowing association's
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
And which would be, if there's a problem there, that you're not, that the association is not, performing to the.
Yeah, we will
to
do
the permit,
everything.
then, they shut down the race, that's what they're
We will
supposed to
do everything we can to make sure that that's taken care of, however, that we've also been advised by law enforcement officials that it was up to them. And if they saw that there was something that they thought was a public danger, something like that, it was well within their rights to
Right.
disregard.
That's not
So
the point.
we don't like them to do that.
No.
But that, in some of those cases, that's what they've done with us.
Right, but the default goes, Patrick, if that's the case, and the permit cannot be, obeyed, then the race is supposed to stop.
Okay?
If that's environmental's call, that they can't allow someone to go down the other end of the boat, out there into the lake in their boat, it's not that the race goes on and these people can't have to stay away from their house. It's the race stops and the people go down.
Yeah.
So that's the disconnect we're having here.
Yeah.
You have a covenant on the permit that says you gotta open the lane. The lane can't be open. There's also a covenant that says if you can't live up to any of the obligations, you have to stop the race.
Sure.
Okay? That's all I'm saying.
Understood.
It's been good. I just, I'm trying to avoid all the possible things we can have and,
Yeah.
all right. Any discussion on the dates themselves besides what we've talked about?
I just have to say, I've been out on my boat, and I've been able to go down, watch the races. Nobody's ever impeded me. I mean, I've never had an issue, and there were people there watching. There are people there on pontoon boats watching, and they explained, told you where you could and couldn't go, and I thought it was well managed. So I've never had an issue. And I also saw them at night taking out the course just like Mr. Diggins said, so I had no issue with that activity or what
Okay,
it
good.
stands for.
Oh,
Do we need to take a vote,
That's
Mr.
always been
Chair?
my experience, so.
Do we need to take a vote, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, to approve the dates.
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, have a great season.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
The most important thing to check.
Amen.
When I went to college, the most important question, check cleared, check didn't clear.
Okay. John, an update from,
All right, a lot of exciting stuff going on.
I like the new do.
around on different sides, and then report. Right here. With some pictures of the incident that, Peter was talking about earlier. And these are Alright, I'm Jacqueline Burmeister from the City of Worcester Department of Public Works and Parks, Lakes and Ponds Program. And I have a few things for you this evening. The first flyer that I sent around, and I'm sure there'll be extras for anyone who wants to take one, is the Lake Commission report that the City of Worcester puts together. On top, you'll see the reference to the incident that Peter was talking about with the treated rock salt that was used to fill in an area down at Browning Beach. There must have been about 10 bags of this magnesium chloride that was dumped under the fire pit right near the water. The sewer department was able to go down there and get most of it out of the way. It's not exactly clear what was trying to be accomplished with this, but these salts in these high quantities are not good for the lake. So they are used for increasing public safety on our roads during icy conditions, but we should avoid contact with the water directly if possible. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you tonight was a continuous water quality monitoring proposal from the City of Worcester of Lake Quinsigamond. Continuous water quality monitoring using buoys is something that previously has been a very expensive thing, and usually just done by really big scientific organizations with lots of money. However, the cost of these buoys have gone down significantly, and we have been looking into trying out a few of them, and we think that Lake Quinsigamond would be a really wonderful place to do them, to use them. And so what these are they're two small solar-powered buoys with water quality monitoring sensors capable of collecting and transmitting data cellularly every 15 minutes from the surface of Lake Quinsigamond. You could see at these pictures, they're about the size of a Frisbee, and are pretty low profile when they're sitting on top of the water. The idea is that we're able to collect real-time data on temperature and parameters related to cyanobacteria. We have a cyanobacteria monitoring program at Lake Quinsigamond that operates through a lot of the summer, and we find that there's not that much risk for cyanobacteria at Lake Quinsigamond in the summer. However, when we get into the fall months, we have less data, and we do have data that suggests that the deeper lakes are more susceptible to these events in the fall time. It's also harder to collect this type of data because these events happen very quickly. They could come and go very fast, and having a continuous monitor out there to transmit this data would help us better understand these dynamics in the lake. The places that we would want to install something like this is in the deeper basins of the lake. So these basins are occurring around below the 290 bridge, so kind of around the gazebo area in the northern portion of the lake, and then in the southern portion, kind of across from where the lake or the pump station, the sewer pumping station is. Those are the two deeper basins in or around that area. We would need to anchor them to larger navigation buoys so that they, first are secured, we'd lock them onto them, and then so that they kind of stay in place and so that people wouldn't hit them with their boats. But we really do think that in collaboration with the Lake Quinsigamond Commission, with the rowing associations, we could come up with either existing navigational buoys that are in the water, or figuring out places that we could put new ones on or around those sites would really help us really increase the breadth of understanding that we have about these dynamics going on at Lake Quinsigamond, help us make more more intelligent management decisions and really just help us better understand cyanobacteria dynamics in deep lakes in general. And it would be the first and only place in Worcester that has this type of technology. Or Shrewsbury, I imagine, as well.
None of these in Dean Park?
No.
How much do these things cost?
The buoys and the software cost about $33,000 a piece. So it's significantly less than what they've cost even in a decade ago.
Did you say 33,000?
We are getting like a package deal, so they're slightly less.
I have a question. Can they be locked?
They would be
to the
locked.
buoy?
Yes.
At the anchor? Because I can see these getting taken pretty quickly.
Right. They all have GPS sensors on them as well, and they're continuously
It's even more
sending
fun for
signals.
us.
Yeah.
But to be clear, the city of Worcester would be purchasing these. What we are asking for now is permission to use them in Lake Quinsigamond, and of course, share the data that we collect with you.
City of Worcester's willing to purchase them,
Yes.
two of them.
Two of them.
The two of them are gonna cost us, say, 30,000, 30,000 each.
Oh, altogether, I don't have the exact numbers on me,
Okay.
but they're about $3,000 each
Oh, I thought she said 30,000 each.
for a year. It's an annual subscription basis to the software, so every year we'd be paying that $3,000.
Where will the information be sent to?
It would be sent to the Lakes and Ponds program, but that information, like all of the information that the Lakes and Ponds program collects, is publicly accessible as it is paid for with taxpayer dollars.
Is that where the Blackstone River Heritage Center is, near Walmart in Worcester?
No, I operate out of the Water Operations Department of Public Works.
Off behind
So
Shrewsbury?
that is, so we're located up in, off Shrewsbury Street.
Yeah, okay.
But this data will, it's all being electronically stored.
Mr. Chairman, if we need a motion to this, I'd make a motion that we collaborate with the city of Worcester on this project, but if we don't need a motion, I would voice my support to be involved in this project.
Yeah, just one, I got a couple of questions to, I agree. I think this is definitely a very good thing to do. We're supportive of lining the lake and taking steps to do all that stuff, so that's all good. So this falls in line with what we want to do, so I think it's good. I think the challenge we're gonna have here is the positioning of these things and when we're gonna do it, especially the northern basin, because,
Yes.
if you're, based on our discussions, it's gonna be right in the middle of the course. Patrick?
Chairman, we're more than happy to work
Okay.
with Jacqueline and make sure that
I mean,
we'll be happy to help get it out there and make sure that it's as safe as it can be.
Okay,
We're happy to, any way we can.
all right. That's awesome. So that shouldn't be a problem. The other question I had, so this, a Frisbee-looking thing, that's not the buoy? Or is there a buoy attached to that?
So this is the sensor, and it would be attached to a navigation buoy. So they would, both the buoy and this would be anchored to the ground, and then this would also be anchored horizontally to the navigation buoy, just so that it has 2 points of anchoring.
Perfect. So is it gonna be beside it or under it, or?
It would be beside it. So it would be floating on top of the water like this. You would just imagine it would be right next to the navigational buoy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and the navigational buoy you're talking about are similar to the ones we use out there now for no wake zones and low spots, or do you have anything in mind for that, or?
I
Could
think
you
it
do
could.
it that way? So
It could be, yes. And so I think having something similar to what people have seen before, so they recognize that it's a place that they wouldn't want to approach with their boat.
Right,
Yeah.
If you know anything about the course, and at the far north end of the lake on the other side of 290, we have 3 big white buoys that are used that attach to the anchors. You don't want to, nobody wants to hit those. 'cause
Yeah,
they're
those-
damaged.
yeah, the big
So
ball
we-
thing.
You know, we can work out, at least during the season, make sure that it's attached to those and they'd be safe, they'd clearly be safe.
Awesome.
The disc would actually be going out, when you say gazebo, I'm assuming you mean Eastern Shores.
Yeah, so,
Sorry, Eastern Point.
somewhere around that area. It doesn't have to be precisely in the deepest part of the lake, but yeah, maybe we could just, get together and just get a map of the bathymetry, where the course lays on top of that, and figure out where we could, position them so that they don't interfere with any of the rowing, and they're also representative, they're also collecting representative data.
I mean, how much damage do you have? You don't really have a lot of damage on the course, no?
Small buoys, yes, but the big buoys, no.
No, okay. And the big buoys aren't in the, like, because this seems to me like this would be in, you'd be a fair amount down the course. If they-
We'd have to see, how big is the disc?
It's about the size of a frisbee.
So I mean, what I'm getting at is you could probably tie that to the course and it'd be
Yeah,
basically stealth and then.
as long as it's,
and then
I'm thinking about it,
Yeah, it's gotta be close.
Jason knows better than I do, but my guess is if we can fasten it so that it's in between two of the buoys that are 10 meters apart,
Right.
it's just gonna sit right there.
That sounds cool. And then when they take the course out, and, after the 31st.
We'll just drop it, yeah.
You'll put your own buoy on the thing
Right.
and it'll be there.
Yeah.
And, eventually people get used to it, I think. Yes, Ann?
Just because these are gonna be new buoys and sort of in spots that I don't think most lake residents would imagine a buoy suddenly showing up. If they did, they would thought it had migrated from somewhere else. Could we have lighting on it so that at nighttime in particular, and especially in the fall, which is when you're really wanting to collect the data, and daylight is a lot less, that they could have nice lighting on them?
Should.
Because that's usually when the other buoys come out, so again,
Right.
we just want to draw attention so that everybody on the lake can see them.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of night traffic, just a lot of all day, all night traffic.
Right.
Right.
No, I agree. I think lights would be a great idea.
Thank
They're
you.
usually going at a good clip right there.
That's,
So, that's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing we should probably, I don't want to get into in this discussion. Like the no wake zone in front of the docks down there and that way. The buoys we have in there now are ineffective. Because no one, hardly anyone slows, I do, but I think I'm like the only person I know that slows down right there. So, all right, I mean, I think this is great. On the southern end, I don't see a big deal, because that's gonna be basically right near Ramshorn Island.
Yeah.
It's gonna be close to where we already have a no wake buoy.
I believe there's one nearby.
Yeah, so you may be able to put there, or we can maybe think about moving that buoy back a little bit. South. I don't know.
Whatever you need.
Great. Yes, and so the idea is that, these would stay out until right before the ice comes, which is the period of time that we have the least amount of data for Lake Quinsigamond as far as what's going on with like the cycling of nutrients in the lake, and it's
Right.
gonna give us some really interesting information on like a very, like small time scale, so it'll be exciting.
Yeah, I love it, I think it's great.
All right, well, I look forward to reaching out to,
We need to vote on the motion.
We need to, yeah.
Oh, yes.
So, Roger, you-
I make a motion, we support this project.
Second the motion?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
awesome. Well, I look forward
you.
to talking more about that with everyone to find the best locations. So I just wanted to mention really quickly what you had brought up, Peter, about the abutter notification. So the City of Worcester Department of Public Works has submitted a notice of intent to build a biofiltration unit at Coal Mine Brook, where it enters Lake Quinsigamond. In that area, we have identified that catch basin as being an entry point for a lot of runoff from that area of Lake Ave North. There's a lot of erosion that happens there, and all of that contributes to not just shallowing of the lake, but also the addition of nutrients. So we're going to be building it's like improved rain garden in the sense that it has all of that biofiltration that a rain garden provides, but also an under drain, so that it has a higher capacity to filter water that comes during a high-intensity rain event. So we hope to be bringing that before the Conservation Commission and moving that project along shortly.
Again, another exciting thing, we're gonna,
Yeah.
do some stuff to mitigate because Coal Mine Brook, I mean, that's coming, stuff from there, that's in that brook is coming from who knows where.
It's a very big watershed.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of impervious surface. And actually, this area that was identified as being a little bit washed out, where the salt was laid, will be benefiting from this project specifically. Another thing I wanted to mention is that the Lake Quinsigamond Watershed Association and other watershed associations in Worcester have partnered with the city to submit a grant to study fisheries across the different water bodies in Worcester. It's kind of a grant to do storytelling about the history of fisheries in Worcester, but also to improve opportunities for anglers to get registration and also identify projects to improve habitat for fish. We want to engage a lot of anglers and really get an idea of what their experiences are in our lakes and ponds. And so we have developed with the watershed associations a survey, an angler survey. We have put it on the City of Worcester website, the Blue Spaces website. If you direct yourself there, you can participate in the angler survey, and it's basically just asking you what you fish for in the different lakes and ponds, and it's going to really help us better understand, what people have been seeing in these fisheries over the last 10 years or so, and help us perhaps identify some future projects and really get an idea of what's here and what could be. So if you go to the Blue Spaces website on the City of Worcester website, you could take that survey, and I really encourage everyone to do that. The cyanobacteria monitoring program will be running again this year.
Can I ask just a
yeah.
comment? Thought, that is, sheet of paper like this, 9 by 11, brought to, and hopefully with the cooperation of local bait shops, Dick's Tackle, maybe even Cabela's, where people buy fishing equipment, ask if you can put something like that up to survey such an opinion other than or in addition to the website you're talking about, where although people may not go to the website, they go to buy fishing lures, they go to buy shiners, worms. If they see this, they might be a little more engaged in terms of bringing it in front of their face and to work with you on that. So it's just a thought.
Absolutely, and that's a very good point, and we did plan on doing that, and actually the survey just went live in like the last day or two, but there will be a flyer that I bring to the next meeting, which will have a QR code, so you could scan it and it will go directly to the survey. So you'd be able to post that in Shrewsbury, anywhere you think that there would be anglers, as well as in bait shops and other
Ramps,
places.
Boating
So-
ramps, yeah.
Can we provide a link on our,
Yeah, we usually get, she'll send,
our
we'll put
page?
her stuff on
And
there.
so if someone comes on the Lake Quinsigamond Commission page, they can,
Yeah, I
we
could,
can
I
direct-
could send a link to Angela, yeah.
that'd be awesome. And the other thing that we may want to consider, although this may be better what the watershed does that, is the Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause we get a lot of traffic on that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and Lake Quinsigamond is really the lake that's gonna benefit probably the most from this grant, just because there's so many anglers
Oh,
and so
yeah,
many
yeah.
potential anglers.
Yeah, it's a
So-
big crowd, so it'd be really good to hear from. They started coming for a while, and then they were talking about the holdover trout and stuff. and-
Right,
This is a good thing, because the anglers felt like they have been left out for a long time at this lake.
we
So
really
this-
wanna bring them in,
I think
yeah.
this is a great,
I think it's really good.
opportunity for everybody.
So, yeah,
Well, And I'll say this, that some of these people know the lake better than anybody.
Right.
You know, they just, because they can go everywhere. And it's, you know, when you talk to them, I'm like surprised every time I talk to one of those guys, and they'll tell me something about some part of the lake that I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, with the paddleboard, I can get to a lot of places where I couldn't get before, but, so, you know, that's been fascinating too, but, yeah, it's nice, I hope they engage.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big goals of this, is to get more angler stakeholders. But, yeah, so real quick, we're doing our cyanobacteria monitoring again this year. Previously, volunteers have taken samples from Lake Quinsigamond, from the Lake Quinsigamond Watershed Association. However, there is an opportunity for people from Flint Pond to join us, for people from Newton Pond, and all of the other ponds that have been joining up with the Lake Quinsigamond Commission. We're having a training on how to do this. All supplies will be provided. You need no background in biology. It's on April 22nd at 5:45 at the Bancroft School Field House in Worcester. I will have a flyer on that in the next month as well. It's still a little bit ways off, but wanted to put it on your radar to get people excited about the possibility of becoming citizen scientists. And then finally, the last thing is that next Wednesday is the State of the Lakes presentation. This is our annual Lakes and Ponds event in which we share the monitoring data that we've collected over the last year, and talk about the successes and challenges that we are facing with our current management plans and how we're adjusting them to improve our water quality. We're going to have a huge focus this year on the cyanobacteria monitoring program. The folks from Lake Quinsigamond are going to be sharing their findings at this event, and as well as all of the other cool projects that we're moving forward with in Lake Quinsigamond and other lakes and ponds in Worcester. So I invite all of you to join us then. There will be food. So, yeah. Hope to see you.
And this year, Roger, you really need to stay for the presentation, not just eat and take off. It's a great, for anyone who hasn't been there, it really is a very informative, and it's a good event, and it's well done, and it's not, you know, it's not drawn out, so it's really a nice, really nice thing to do, and have, like, you know, little booths and stuff out front, and you can go around to different places, so it's worth it. So, do you guys televise that? No? Yes?
I think sometimes when they could get there.
When they can get there?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Mr. Collins is right. It's a subject that seems like it could be dry, and they really did a terrific
Yeah.
job last year. Because I kept thinking, I wonder if I'm gonna be bored, and it was like, when it was over, I said, wow, this was great. So it's very informative, and it's entertaining isn't maybe the right word, but it's pretty fun thing to be at.
Compelling.
Compelling is a good word. You do a good
Great.
job.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, update from the Lake Quinsigamond Watershed Association. Barbara, you gonna,
She is chatting.
You're joking.
take your time.
Hello, Barbara Kickham, Lake Quinsigamond Watershed Association. Jackie had a lot of updates, so I'm not going to add to the things she talked about, except that we did get notification yesterday that we got the $4,350 grant for the bacteria monitoring for this summer. The state was a Mass DEP grant that will allow us to do, we're gonna do 5 rounds of bacteria sampling, April, May, or just basically May and June, and then July, August, first week of September. We will be funding that, us, potentially you guys, and the city of Worcester is putting in over $2,000. So a share between the Watershed Association and the commission will be like a little over 1,000 each. But we'll formally request that, because we didn't request any money from you guys last year, even though we were approved to help fund our bacteria monitoring last summer. So we didn't, we just covered it. We have a person we think we can, that we can train to do the monitoring this year. Our intern from last summer is graduating, so we'll be working forward on that. I think the press release came out today. We will be sampling Coal Mine Brook, Kings Brook, Billings Brook, Fitzgerald Brook. And then we're gonna sample the 2 outfalls, one at UMass, one under the Route 9 bridge, near the vortex separator, and 2 mid-lake sample locations.
Wow.
So, yeah. Every other week, and we are going to use a contract lab this year rather than taking them to Worcester, because they're just too busy, the lab's too busy. So we do have added costs for that, but I think it's all
Okay.
pretty good funding.
So, you never billed us for the approved money?
No, we didn't. We just paid. I assume it's too late now because we're in a new fiscal year, right? So, I think it's fine.
No, it's actually the same fiscal year. Till June.
We did
This summer.
Yeah.
we did a fundraising and raised $2,000 just for sampling last year.
Okay, I don't, if we commit to something, feel free to,
Okay, well, we can talk
follow
about
up
that.
on it.
We
Yeah.
can talk about that, but definitely this year would be good.
We want to help out and do whatever we can to,
Yeah.
I think this program's really worth it. I'm excited and I congratulate the watershed, and the individuals that got this done, got this grant done. So, I know it's not easy work, so really, we really appreciate it, and all the work you guys do, but, this kind of stuff is really, important.
Yeah,
So-
and they're probably not gonna offer the grant next year, so it's good we got it this year. We'll get one, snapshot in time on bacteria. And
Right.
hopefully it'll be very informative, and we'll see what happens next year.
We'll figure out how we can fund programs that we need to do.
Yeah,
So that's the great thing about the collaboration we got going on.
Yeah.
So and that was the exciting part about last year that I liked. There was, the Lakes and Ponds and the Lake Quinsigamond Commission and the Lake Quinsigamond Watershed Association, they're all working together to get this done, and that is exactly what we should be doing. So I think those are the kind of things, that's why I think it's important, you deserve the money from us. So, because we want to collaborate, we want to be part of it, we want to make sure that we get that kind of stuff. That we help to make it happen.
great, thank you.
You agree with that?
Yes.
A lot of good news for the lake tonight.
Yeah.
Like Peter says, I think that was great you guys were able to get that. Congratulations on getting that grant.
Very good.
Very good.
Thank you. All right. So, our,
Losing membership, Mr. Chick.
I know. So we're moving on to,
You have to move along.
the folks, it's getting kind of late here. The folks from the Community Preservation Act, they have a presentation to do. So you guys are up. Jason?
Just lost our quorum, we had to vote on anything, but whatever.
I think we have to vote. You're not asking for money, right? As a body,
Award.
I'm offering the opportunity to actually raise funds. I'll get into the presentation. Bye. So passing out the slides for the conversation, and then there's also an attachment in the back that is a reference point. So my name is Jason Molina. I'm representing the Community Preservation Shrewsbury Ballot Committee that was formed in late last year. The purpose of the ballot committee is to seek the adoption of the Community Preservation Act in Shrewsbury. The act was enacted in 2000 at the state level and allows communities that opt into it by adopting this Community Preservation Act to raise funds for dedicated funding for specifically open space and recreation, for historic preservation, and affordable housing. Obviously, I'm here in front of this group here because of two pieces, open space and recreation, which hopefully through this presentation, you would take interest in CPA, as I described what CPA can do for the Lake Quinsigamond Commission and the residents that enjoy the lake. 176 towns and communities have adopted CPA, including Grafton, Northborough, and West Boylston. So certainly there's other, half the state has been covered by CPA. That also represents 62% of the population of the state as well. So a lot of communities and a lot of people have been taking advantage of CPA, and our ballot committee is hoping that Shrewsbury would be the next community to do that. So CPA, came about because it was hard to fund these sorts of projects, again, open space recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing through their regular municipal budget process. As you would imagine, the municipal budget process funds the biggest rocks in town, whether that be education, safety, and infrastructure. And so CPA was brought out of the way to be able to fund those things and not impact those other high priority items within our community. So the legislature created this separate funding mechanism that allows it to be in its own swim lane, not to compete with the other priorities in town. So the monies that go into this and to afford these funding sources that I was talking about is generated through an additional surcharge that is put on real estate property tax bills of not more than 3% of that bill. Later on in my presentation, I'll cover what that money looks like and what options we're looking for to do in Shrewsbury. Communities that adopt CPA receive a variable match from the state. So that's the incentive that the state kicks in and say, hey, if you want to join on to CPA, we'll even give you some money for free just by doing so. And then, some folks will say, well, why now? To be quite frank, with the presidential election, there's already a high level of built-in turnout of people coming, and so it only makes sense that any folks that want to seek a ballot question would do so for the November election. And also in addition to that is that why leave money on the table from the state? If we adopt, the sooner we get adoption of this, the sooner we can reap the benefits from the state trust fund that would benefit us as well. Okay, I'm on slide 3, which is what can be funded through CPA. On that top slide there is a grid of what the project's going to be funded, and there's some verbs there. You can acquire land, you can create projects for this, you can preserve, you can support, or you can rehabilitate and restore. And you can see across the top there's the open space category, recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing. And in the intersection, you can see where it is applicable and where it is not applicable. So as an example, you can acquire space, open space, you can acquire recreation, you can create recreation, you can preserve open space and recreation, and you can also rehabilitate and restore open space and recreation. There was a key amendment that was made to the CPA legislation in 2012 that allowed for the rehabilitation of existing recreational parks. Previously, it had been only lands that were recreation that was created through the CPA Act, but again, in 2012, they allowed it to be existing parks. Okay, on to slide 4, examples of CPA-funded projects. These are just examples, certainly, the ones that we will use as part of our conversation piece. For open space, you can acquire open space throughout Shrewsbury. You can preserve more land that directly impacts our public water supply. I'm sure that's very hot in Shrewsbury, right? As far as the concerns over our water supplies. For recreation side, you can create walking and bike trails. You can also create and rehabilitate public playgrounds and splash parks. You can make our existing public parks more accessible in complying with ADA legislation. And then the other two categories, well, I know this is the Lake Quinsigamond Commission, so I won't cover these points deeply in our presentation, but if you have a question about it, I can certainly talk to those. On the historic preservation side, qualifying historic buildings can be preserved. Historic artifacts could also be restored. So certainly think about it, if there's any historical locations within the Lake Quinsigamond area, right, any archaeological surveys that could be done, that's also an opportunity with CPA funds. And then lastly, affordable housing. The Act explicitly allows for creation of additional affordable housing for low-income senior folks, as an example. All right, on slide 5 is, I pulled out from there's a project database where all the towns and municipalities that decided to say yes to CPA, they annually put into the registrar a listing of projects that they use for CPA, with CPA funds. So I pulled out some of these lake focused projects. So Sudbury, over a few years, decided that they used $91,000 of CPA funds for harvesting non-native aquatic weeds in their pond, the number of ponds you see there. That was against their open space category. Groton, back in '05 and '06, decided to create swimming and boating access on their beach, along with adding a dock. That was for $23,000. East Hampton, over one of their ponds, they had created a promenade with a recreational facility, with seating, landscaping, lighting, and 3 boat docks. That was $245,000 of CPA, along with other funding sources. Hanson, back in a couple years ago, 2018, replaced their docks at their Cranberry Cove, $80,000. Needham, construction of an all-person trail at the Needham Reservoir. Combination of stone dust, cement boardwalk was part of that cost. Fishing docks were added and rope for visually impaired folks. That was $860,000 of CPA funds, along with $125,000 from other sources. And finally, Grafton, they did some dredging and removing of weeds for $150,000. And Grafton also made a series of improvements to the Silver Lake Beach, notably sand, grills, canopy, and improving handicap accessibility for a total of $88,000 to date. So I bring up these examples because if you can see the amount of money that was used from CPA funds to fund those efforts, you have to imagine, can you get that kind of funding through the municipal side of the budget? And I think I can safely say no. Right. CPA specifically helps open space, recreation, affordable housing, and historic preservation. And so you can start looking at CPA as a way to say, you know, all those projects that I had sitting in my backlog of, gee, wouldn't it be great if we can do this in our community? Can be done through CPA if we adopt CPA in Shrewsbury. In the next slides I have here are just other towns that use CPA, and just some call-outs. I won't go through all of them, but I'll just say a couple of them for our audience as well. Northborough, one of the big ones that they did CPA funding for is the creation of the town common. So if you get on Main Street, you'll notice that they raised a few buildings over there that were dilapidated and created a brand new town common. Usually unheard of in towns today. Usually you have a town common you had from the 1700s, but they did it with CPA funds. And then historic preservation. For that community, they decided the White Cliffs was really important to them to preserve. That is their business to say what they want to do with it, but it was in their best interest. And for $2.4 million of CPA funds, they preserved a local treasure for them. Okay, Grafton already covered with the recreation part of the Silver Lake. In Holliston, I'll just point out there that they also they had a open space location that needed parking, and that was for $30,000 to make that open space accessible for others, for additional residents. The other part here on the recreation side to call out, and I know it's not necessarily directly on the lake side, but just for our audience, tennis courts, basketball court renovations, including backboard renovations, adding and upgrading existing lighting fixtures at a park in Holliston, $255,000 of CPA funds. Folks, the point with CPA is that there's a lot of good that can be had with our community, and we can start doing the projects again on that wish list if we only adopt CPA. Okay. So what is the proposal? If we look on slide 9, the proposal for Shrewsbury that the ballot committee is seeking, and of course as we go through our different commissions and boards, and we're going to be going to the Board of Selectmen in the next week or so, is we're going with a proposal of a 1% surcharge. Now, if you recall in the beginning of my comments, the legislation allows for up to 3%. of that tax bill. We thought that 3% is a lot to ask for, though it is very tempting because the state does kick in the most of the match of 3% communities. But 1% seemed to be more favorable as we talk to folks about what they can stomach to be able to fund this. If approved by town meeting, we will be going to the to the November ballot with this question. And it's up to the voters of Shrewsbury to decide to adopt it at the ballot referendum. A community can hold another referendum in the future to adjust the surcharge, whether up or down. They can add or remove exemptions that I'll be covering in the next slide, or they can outright revoke the adoption of CPA. So the CPA has to be on the books for 5 years if we adopt it, but after those 5 years, it can be revoked should the voters want to do that. Out of 176 communities to date, 0 have revoked it. Again, 0. But several have updated and several have lowered it as well. So once a community adopts it, at least the data shows 176 communities love it and keep it. Okay, now let's say, well, what does it mean for me? How does it impact? On slide 10 is the cost of property owners. That top table gives you an illustration of examples of real property values. The right smack in the middle there is the average single-family property value for Shrewsbury, and that's $478,603 to be exact. And so for that property owner, the annual tax bill for CPA would be $47.21. So since we have quarterly payments, that's roughly $12 a quarter. So for $12 a quarter, we could be funding all those lakeside projects, or the water quality issues that we try to address, right? We can be buying the land that protects the watershed. We can be using monies from CPA to address any erosion control that needs to be done around the lake. Right? That's another way to think about CPA funds. Of course, also, you know that you guys are sharing this with Worcester and Grafton. Grafton does have CPA, right? They've already enacted it back in 2002. And Worcester, as I hear, there are some folks in their community that are looking to have CPA adopted. Of course, they haven't done it, and so that is on their timetable to do so. But think about, our ask as far as having CPA adopted in Shrewsbury. Very key to hear and saying, well, what if you can't afford CPA if you're if you're some folks in town? There are folks that will be exempted by this through our proposal. The surcharge will be exempt for low-income property owners, and it'll also be exempt for low to moderate-income senior property owners. And there's a HUD table that defines what is a low-income person or family and a low-income to moderate-income senior. So that is purely stated. It is spelled out. It is, it can be referenced, and it's not someone arbitrarily saying, yeah, you qualify, right? So it does that. And then also for the purposes of the calculation, there's also another exemption of taking a haircut off the value of your home for the purposes of the surcharge. We're looking to add in that $100,000 taxable property value deduction across all property taxes. So whether your home is $200,000 or $800,000, you will be benefiting from that haircut off the value to lessen the impact on your bill from a surcharge perspective. The CPA surcharge. So that means that a $200,000, usually probably a 1-bedroom, 1-bath cottage near the lake may be only $12 a year for CPA. Okay?
Right, cool.
All right, if we move on. All right, so on slide 11, so revenues from CPA. So just to reiterate, there will be a local CPA surcharge receipts. That is estimated via 1% surcharge to generate $500,000 annually. Right, so as I talked earlier about those individual project examples and all those price tags of what can you be done with that, you can see right away $500,000 can really do a lot of good in our community. Of course, this has to be shared with the other funding categories I talked about. Not only open space and recreation, but affordable housing and historic preservation. So I'll cover the allocations on that in the next slide. But along with that local charges, the state match also kicks in as well. And had if Shrewsbury had already adopted CPA, last year's distribution, last year's return on our investment would have been 23.9%. That is a very good return, very good return. Okay? And only communities that adopt CPA would get that money. So the other part to this is that the way the state trust fund gets funded is through Registry of Deed transactions. So everybody who does a transaction, let's say you sell your house, you refinance, you've completed your mortgage and you've had a transaction at the Registry of Deeds. In that transaction is a built-in fee that pays for the state fund for CPA. And so folks that have done transactions in Shrewsbury have been paying into the fund and not been able to get anything back for our community because we haven't adopted CPA. Adopting CPA, we'll be able to tap into that trust fund. So that's also, like I said in the beginning, is one of our drivers to get this done now, is to start getting that money back from the state. And again, 23.9% is a good return on that investment. Some folks who have been following CPA would know that in the early years, CPA was given out 100% from the state on the first few years, and as more communities have jumped on board, that the state trust fund has gone down from a percentage point. It got to a critical mass where it was low enough that the communities that were already signed on and said, hey, you have a structural problem for the state side of the trust fund. You got to stand this thing up. So they got together and petitioned for the Baker and Polito administration to address the issue, and they did. And so last year, they increased the fees at the Registry of Deeds for the sole purpose of standing up the trust fund. So with the anticipation is that for the next few years, and of course, it depends on the markets, depends on land values, depends on all the factors, but the projection at this point is with those increased fees at the Registry of Deeds, 30% return is what would it be for communities that are under the 3% surcharge rate. So I mentioned earlier that if you're at a 3%, if a community's at a 3%, they get the max return possible through a few cycles. Won't go into all that detail of it because it's just too much for that, but again, as a 1% community, we would be seeing 23.9%. Any questions on that one?
Nope. I got some questions. Well, a few. When would this say, there's a lot of support for this. When can this thing get moving in terms of, you said we have to go to a November ballot?
We would have to go to,
You
first
want
this
to try
would
to do
be
that this year?
a warrant goes to town meeting to adopt, asking the town meeting to adopt CPA.
You're going to try to do that at this year's town meeting? Okay.
Yep.
Now, one thing, so relative to our self-interest, that, if, say, I'm relatively correct in my assessment, that Shrewsbury potentially out of this could have, say, this year, technically speaking, gotten $125,000. I see that in terms of the Community Preservation Committee, you have the Conservation Commission, Planning Commission, Historic, Housing. I would recommend, a member of the Lake Quinsigamond Commission, because otherwise, if you wanted our support as a commission, to know that we have a seat at the table to discuss and so decide how the money would be spent, would be of concern to us, and not to have a seat at the table to be able to discuss and decide, say, some possible allocation of such monies towards the lake would be a concern, and a negative concern, So let me just say that out loud. Looks great. I'm a Shrewsbury property owner and pay taxes, so I understand it would mean, approximately $47 more than my tax bill, but if I knew it was coming back to the lake in some positive fashion, I'd probably be myself supportive of it. So I guess that's my comments right now. Because, thank you.
Sure. So that is on the next slide there. So I'll just briefly touch about, so that's the way everyone is on the same page about CPC, including our folks behind us. So CPA would have local control through a committee that would be formed locally called Community Preservation Committee. And there are 5 statutory members, and there's 4 optional members that would be joining that. So the statutory requirements are to have a member of the Conservation Commission, Planning Board, Historical Commission, Housing Authority, and Parks and Cemetery Commission. And again, then there's adoptional 4 to that. We would like to see a 9-member board, and I'll cover that in a moment. But what the point of the CPC is that they will review project requests submitted to CPC. Of course, the Lake Quinsigamond Commission could be one of the sponsors of a project request saying, we'd like to see this happen. And then the CPC reviews this along with the other projects that have been submitted, and then goes to town meeting for approval. So the CPC would be the board to review the projects, and town meeting is the allocating or entity, right, as we always have from a funding perspective. The CPC, part of this statute is that monies have to be allocated at least 10% to 3 categories. For the purposes of budgeting, open space and recreation are lumped together, and then affordable housing, and then historic preservation. There's also, not written here, but there's also it could be an optional allocation for a 5% administration overhead for the CPC itself, for their self-funding, to make sure there's any, copies or prints, whether it be reviewing legal documentation and just that kind of, those are operations, but it would just be for them, for that part. And then the rest of the balance is discretionary at CP only for these categories to allocate and what is a priority. So let's say that year they said, hey, there's a really good effort for lake projects. We have the monies, nothing else is, ready for historic or affordable housing. Why not, right? And obviously you guys would make a pitch as an entity that would be presenting on why this should be funded to CPC, and then obviously at a town meeting to make the pitch on why this is a good project. But in terms of the composition of CPC, our committee is intentionally not seeking to define the committee at this time, and that is allowable, just because it would be, there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had about how the board would be structured for the remaining 4 folks, right? You could imagine a lot of folks want to have a seat at the table to make that decision internally. Lake Quinsigamond, Commission, I think is right up the alley of saying why CPC would be looking at this, right? Because it fits right nicely into an open space and recreation side of the administration. But I think that's something that we have to decide as a community. And let's first see if town meeting wants to adopt CPA. Let's see if the voters of Shrewsbury want to adopt this formally in November. And the very next day, our committee will be ensuring that the bylaw gets written up, solicited around to be able to, to get that bylaw in motion. We can go to the ballot without the Community Preservation Committee formed, but we cannot draw monies from CPA until we have that committee established. So our timetable would allow for that to be had.
My point, if I can, Mr. Chair, Jason, is that I know we've had at least 750 dock permits, which means there's at least 750 properties on the lake, probably more, like 1,000. And I also know that abutters in Shrewsbury on the lake pay a higher than average, I think, tax rate. I think we do. That could be checked out, in terms of those fact checkers. But consequently, we'd like to. Well, I'd like to know that in some capacity, it's gonna come back to, help the lake and the environs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
This doesn't come out of levy 1, so we don't, the tax rate doesn't matter, but the tax rate, everybody in Shrewsbury pays the same rate. The tax, it's based on the value of your home, so the value of your home is more than it would be, say, if you had your same house and your same house was on Grafton Street, it's worth more money where it is now. So
Mr. Chairman,
your tax go up for that.
if they pass this, and you have to look at the composition of the committee, the Lake Commission already has a member of the Conversation Committee on this one. No, I mean from Shrewsbury. And, so that's not a big problem. You can have it be the same person.
I agree.
And I think it makes a good point. It's nice to have the Lake Commission represented, but it could be represented by someone from the Shrewsbury Comcom.
This is all good stuff, and, obviously for us, because we're, there's a, I can think off the top of my head, a bunch of projects in and around the lake. on the Shrewsbury side especially, I mean, I'm hoping Worcester will actually get on board, because there's a couple things in, I mean, Linear Park, all the other stuff you guys are thinking about doing over there, this could help for that too, but, so I think it's a good program. I know you got an uphill battle, you know, adding another 45 or $50 to someone's tax bill.
I'll vote for
100 there,
Shrewsbury to
100
pay
there,
more
50
taxes.
there, you know, blah, blah, blah. That's the argument you'll probably end up getting, but, I think it's a good thing. You know, I would be supportive of the selectmen putting this on the warrant instead of having to go for ballot petition, but, either way, we seem to have some success with ballot petitions lately, so,
Well, it's, yeah, certainly we are seeking to go through the Board of Selectmen in terms of asking them to
Yeah.
put a warrant article. And, you know, as a citizen's petition, certainly we would do that should there not be
citizen, that's what I meant.
you know, a favorable,
Yeah.
favorable view on this. You know, we've talked to a lot of committees, right? A lot of committees, 15, you're the 16 now, so a lot of momentum behind this. A lot of folks are seeing the value in CPA, and we'll save the best for a town meeting, and then
Good.
we'll see how that goes. The only ask is, and I know you're now missing 2 members tonight at this point, is if the commission would look at this and vote to whether endorse or not, or if there's any questions or concerns, send that feedback to the Board of Selectmen so that they can hear and they can make an informed decision about how you guys see CPA benefiting, obviously from a commission's perspective.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that at the next commission meeting, when we'll have a quorum, we can't take a vote tonight because we lost a couple of members.
there's no sense
that-
to make a motion.
Okay, all right.
But I think
So
we're.
leave it at that,
Ask
Mr.
Angela
Chair.
to put something on the agenda.
Let's put it on the agenda
Let's put it on the agenda
to discuss and hopefully so vote at next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's as much as we can say right now.
I do have one last question.
Sure, please.
Which
And
is,
members who unfortunately had to leave tonight, they can watch this on TV repeated on the Shrewsbury cable.
Sorry.
do you know whether there's a comparable effort in Worcester?
So there is a coalition that helps communities build CPA endorsements, and through them, I've learned that there's an effort in Worcester. To date, I have not heard who that contact is, but I can certainly, when I hear it, I can certainly pass that along to you.
That would be great, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Jason, nice job.
Make a motion that, Mr. Chair, we meet again March 25th, I believe it is, Wednesday?
All
Yeah.
right, so 25th is the date for that, and,
I make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we adjourn.
no, because we don't have
Okay.
enough people, but I'm gonna take it upon myself as chair to adjourn the meeting. Yeah. We're adjourned.
All in favor? Okay. Thank you, everyone.